So first things first, Justin, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm alright, thanks. So before we get into the music you've been making and releasing lately, I'd like to jump back to the beginning.
Okay. How far back?
Well, let's see how far we get. Do you remember the first artist or song that you were absolutely in love with?
Oh gosh. Yeah, probably "Man in the Mirror," Michael Jackson.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember, for some reason, I just remember putting something in the back of a trunk, like a trunk of a car. And I don't know why this memory it's so fuzzy, but it was like red, and it was like a hatchback, and it opened up like this. And I remember putting something in the back of the car and my father dancing really weirdly to "Man in the Mirror." So that was probably the first song I ever fell in love with.
So were your parents musical?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No.
So this is a kind of a passion you've developed on your own?
Yeah, well, my great-grandfather, who I never met, was musical. He, his nickname was Jesso.
Okay.
And so I took his name as my last name. And he was a band leader in the 20s, and he used to play piano for Al Capone, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some story.
Yeah.
Because I read, you mentioned Michael Jackson, I read that you used to do talent shows to Michael Jackson and Ray Charles songs and those kind of things. So how early on in your life was that? Was it a passion from the beginning?
The first time I ever did anything like that, I was 5 years old.
Okay.
And my grandmother had a talent show at her community center, and she's like, "Oh, I'll enroll my grandson." And so I got up there and sang an Al Jolson song called Swanee, which she loved, that no one else will ever know. That's under the age of 75. And I fell in love with it and walked off the stage and turned to my mom and said, "This is what I want to do for the rest of my life."
And how, obviously you were quite young, so this is a weird question, but how do you proceed from there? How do you kind of turn yourself into somebody who writes songs? And
I started writing songs when I was 10. And I just did it randomly with friends. You know, I had a friend who lived a couple towns over who was like, "Let's get together and write a song." Like, okay. So that's how that started for me. And then when I was 15, I met a producer in Chicago and started working with him. And he kind of taught me the ins and outs of songwriting and production and arrangement. And so I kind of started learning at that point,
right.
Around 15, 16.
When did you write the first song that you were proud of? Was it already before?
I don't know if I still have I written a song I'm proud of. Yeah, no, I think probably in my 20s was the first time I wrote. I mean, I along the way, when I was 10 years old, I wrote a song and I was proud of it. The first song I ever wrote was at camp,
okay.
And it was about a girl named Leah who I liked, and it went, "Leah, would you meet me by the pier? You bring the lettuce, and I'll bring the beer. There may be a deer, but don't you fear, 'cause I'll hold you near. We'll drink some lettuce, eat some beer, look at your rear. Oh, what a lovely rear." Anyway, so that was the song. I remember every word of it. And I was, at the time, I was very proud of that song. Now, maybe not so much. Especially because she didn't like me after I wrote that song.
Well, but
it didn't work out for me.
No, but it's still an interesting thing because when you, especially at that, well, let me get you your coffee first.
Oh, that's okay. I can have it
Yeah,
afterwards.
you sure? Because
Yeah.
I can cut this out.
No, no worries.
Okay. Because, well, what's interesting about that story is it showed that music could fulfill a certain role in your life, and I don't mean necessarily trying to get girls, but
Sure.
It's a way of kind of dealing with emotions and getting certain thoughts out
And expressing myself. And,
exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what did that? I don't know if it was a realization, but what did that do to you? The kind of the ability to get thoughts onto paper and to kind of work things through.
I mean, it kind of gave me an outlet that I hadn't really had before to express myself, and it was particularly helpful for me. I had a career before this as a Disney artist,
okay.
And I did a bunch of music with Radio Disney, and that all I essentially failed. I had a bad manager, and it all went to shit, and I got very depressed. And I went to college, and I was very depressed my first year of college, and being able to, that's when expressing myself through music really kind of helped me get through my depression, as opposed to just being something that I did. It started serving a purpose. And you know, so now I hope that it affects other people similarly. Right. You know, I want to help people with it.
And that first year of college then, do you still have some of the songs that you wrote? Do you have them recorded somewhere?
Oh,
or
yeah.
Sheets of paper?
Yeah, I do. I don't think they're very good anymore, but...
Well, the thing that's kind of interests me is, I don't know if you've looked through them recently or heard them recently, but what could you hear kind of the what you were going through in those songs?
Yeah, yes. If I go back and listen to them, yes. But I also think that all of those, but at that point I wasn't great at songwriting, right? So I think that it's almost harder to hear them in the forms they were back then than in the forms that they are now. Because what I did was I took those emotions that I had back then and I continue to draw from them when I write about stuff today. So, you know, I'm always going back to my past and my feelings, and now I'm just able to articulate myself better because I'm a better songwriter.
What were, maybe just one thing you can share that you had to learn in order to become a better songwriter, if you look back at those early songs and kind of how you've developed over the years?
I mean, I think it's just about how to tell a story, you know, whether that's like how to come up with a melody that makes more sense, or, you know, how to put words together that isn't just kind of it all kind of coming out at once and saying what I feel, because I think sometimes I don't think as linearly as you would need to think for a song, you know. Sometimes it's just kind of all over the place, and in order to kind of craft that story together, you have to take a step back and go, okay, does this all equal up to something that makes sense?
And what has been the thing that helped you most in songwriting? Was it writing with others, or just a song, discovering things on your own? But how did you kind of experience the last couple of years?
A little bit of both. I mean, I definitely feel like some of my most authentic songs are when it's just me in a room with one other person, and that person kind of, usually it's a producer, and they just kind of let me work and build around what I'm doing. But I've also, you know, had similar experiences where I get there where it's multiple people in a room. I definitely think bad sessions help a lot too. Okay. Like knowing what I don't like.
Right.
Helps kind of narrow it down to what I do. But I think just in general being open to whatever's in the air or whatever's in the room and capturing whatever feelings I have or whatever feelings my co-writers have, and being open to what that is kind of a lot of times the key in a room. You know, I have a song coming in a couple of months called "If You're Meant to Come Back to Me, You Will." It's one of my favorite songs I've ever written, and it's partly my story about my ex-girlfriend and, you know, letting her go and that she'd come back to me, but also it was born out of a conversation I had with one of the producers in the room at the time, where he was telling me about his experiences and a speech that he gave to his current girlfriend when he realized that he wanted her back. Right. And being able to kind of step outside myself for a second and listen to that story and translate that into a song was what got us there. And then being able to pull from my own experiences to kind of give that concept and those ideas that I initially drew from him life is what got me to the finish line. Right. You know?
Should I see it in a sense as kind of finding the right balance in terms of not being too personal, because then nobody can relate if you're being too specific, but now...
I don't think you can be too specific, to be honest. I mean, I think there are times where it doesn't pay to be too specific. Like a lot of times, you know, if you're in a chorus and you're trying to get at the bigger sentiment of the song, sure, you don't want to put the specific in a place that hinders. But in general, I feel like in verses and pre-choruses and choruses, you know, the specifics are sometimes what tell the story best. And what make the story more real and more relatable is you know, I'm trying to think of a good example, but like, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of my own songs. Even just like Let It Be Me. It's, you know, I'll lie to you if you want me to. I'll tell the truth because sometimes you need it. That's, you know, that's kind of a weird thing to say.
Sure.
Like, I'll lie to you if you want me to. It's like, what I meant by it is like, I'll say what you need to hear when you need to hear it, if that's what you need. And, you know, for the days when it's hard to wake up and the nights you can't fall asleep, for the times when you feel the greatest and the world's sitting at your feet, like, it's general, but it's also specific to, you know, issues that I've had. For the good and the bad and the ugly and everything in between, kind of branches it out. There's a lyric in Getting Closer, found a book in my room with your pictures and your letters, little pieces of me are keeping it together. Little pieces of you are keeping me together. And, you know, that actually happened. Like, I found a book of pictures and letters from my ex, you know, and that was the specific thing that happened to me, and I feel like that helps tell the story.
So in that sense then, can you separate yourself from those things once the song is done, or do you revisit kind of that emotion when you perform them, or when you, like you say, when you discuss them with people you write with?
It's a little bit of both. Sometimes I go back there fully, and sometimes, you know, because it wears off sometimes too. You know, so I'll be singing a song over and over and over again. You know, I've probably sung Stargazing in concert now 200 times.
Sure.
You know, and it kind of probably hits me fully every couple of times. You know, and usually when I'm doing it on the piano, not usually when I'm doing it in a big arena, because there's so much going on. You know, that. It's almost like telling a different story.
Right.
You know, when I sit down at the piano and I play it, it's like I'm telling the original story and feeling the original story.
And I suppose because that song has meant quite a lot to you in terms of where you are now. I don't know if you see it the same way, but so is that an added layer in a way that you have certain songs that kind of are catalysts in parts of your life?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that song is particularly meaningful to me because it gave me a career as an artist.
Well, sorry to interrupt. There's one, because we talked about you being in college and then you're not being in the best of places early on. So what was the thing that kept you going then? What was the thing that turned you around and be positive about a career in music again? Was it something like Stargazing?
Well, Stargazing came many years later.
Fair enough.
But, you know, back then I think it was what got me to be positive again was making music again.
Okay.
You know, so I took some time off and, you know, was still kind of writing, but it didn't feel like I was actually working on making music that I was going to sing. I was just kind of doing it.
Right.
And I think that kind of getting refocused on music, because I went to Meisner acting school for 2 years and learned nothing about acting and a lot about myself.
Okay.
And, you know, it kind of taking that and wrapping it back up into music helped me get to a better place. But it took a while.
Right.
I mean, it took a really long time.
Because what did you realize about yourself then in terms of, was it that acting wasn't for you? Was it along those lines?
No, I think it was more the idea that I just needed to be making music. You know, it was more the idea that I needed to be creative in that way, and that when I wasn't being creative in that way, I wasn't as happy. And you know, sometimes I get now, like because of all the travel and because of all the performances, I get really down actually on performance days. I love it. I love performing, but it's really taxing.
Sure.
So I get pretty drained the day of. And then I got on stage and everything's fine. But the day of leading up to it, I'm super nervous and super anxious.
This is not uncommon because I talk to a lot of musicians and kind of that, especially for people look at it from the outside, the amount of traveling, the exhaustion, that kind of, there is a lot of exhaustion among artists, I think. How have you kind of learned to accept that part of what you do?
I think you just have. I think you just have to know. Whenever I get down like that, I call my mom.
Okay.
Yeah, and I called her yesterday actually, and I was on the plane and I was just like, "Hi." She's like, "Hi. What's up?" I was like, "I don't know. I'm just in a weird space." She's like, "Okay. Do you want to talk about it?" "Oh, no." She goes, "Okay. Well, you're going to perform and do what you love, so I'm sure you're just going to sleep on the plane, and when you get to Amsterdam, you'll be fine." And I go, "Okay." She's like, "Are you sure you don't want to talk about it?" I'm like, "No." So just kind of having the check-in and having someone say, "Hey, remember, this is what you want. This is what you've worked for your entire life."
And hearing the familiar
and here you
voice.
get to do it. And hearing a familiar voice, and that helps. Not right at the time, but in time it helps. And you go, "Okay, I'm doing what I love to do. I'm grateful that I get to do this." But being a songwriter was much easier.
Well, I was going to say, because, I don't know the exact timeline, but once Stargazing happened and kind of that whole thing kicked off,
yeah,
I suppose the way you looked at music must have changed because it involved different things now.
Yeah, well, I knew at that point that, once I saw it doing well, I knew that was kind of my shot to get back to doing what I was supposed to be doing, which was singing my own songs. Because, I'd had a career as a songwriter before, and I'd written songs for Ricky Martin and Maluma and the Backstreet Boys and Armin van Buuren and up-and-comers like A.J. Mitchell and Harvey, and so that was my life, was writing for other people, and I always felt like that wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. Although I do enjoy it, it was always in service of pulling a Julia Michaels or a Bruno Mars or a John Legend and having people take me seriously as an artist. Right. So I realized I could make that transition once Stargazing started taking off. And then everything shifted for me. I stopped doing a lot of session work for other people and got to focus on myself.
And like you said, like you mentioned earlier on, when you were 5 and going on stage for the first time, you knew kind of this is what I want to do. So that whole thing of becoming just a songwriter wasn't an option.
Yeah, no, it wasn't, and it still isn't. And but this this journey is now as an artist is a lot different.
Sure.
And in a great way. I'm so grateful that I get to do this. I'm so grateful that I get to be here in Amsterdam doing a showcase for label partners and radio stations and TV shows and and that people get to hear my music and that I have a platform now and I can help people through that platform and, and make positive change, As a songwriter, I think you're one step removed from that. So it's harder to really love it like that.
Right.
Some people do, because it's an easier lifestyle. But this is always what I've meant to be doing.
And in terms of kind of to round off, then in terms of the music you've been making now, kind of which still needs to be released, because can I assume you're gearing up towards an album?
Probably an EP.
EP.
I think we're going to do an EP, hopefully by the end of the year.
Okay.
There's going to be a single coming out in September, hopefully a single coming out in October as well, or maybe November, and then an EP at some point before the end of the year or very early next, with 4 or 5 or 6 songs on it. So yeah, gearing up towards that.
Because I can imagine what you're experiencing now, what you just told me, does that seep in through the music and the lyrics, kind of even consciously or subconsciously?
Yeah, a little bit. We'll see. We'll see when the music comes out.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, definitely. I already know there's one song on the album or the EP that's going to be a single that I'm really excited about that has those sentiments in it. And I'm super excited. I'm going on my first European headline tour.
Right.
I guess it starts now, but September really is when it is. And I'm doing a couple of shows in August, and then I'm coming back for part 1 of the European headline tour in September, which is going to be really cool.
Final question.
Yeah.
Now you just mentioned that song that is coming out was written about your ex. Then Let It Be Me. Am I right in saying that was also about your ex?
Everything's about my ex.
But
Yeah.
was it the same one?
Yeah.
Because well, I tend to ask this question, but do you know whether she heard it or not?
I don't know. Well, Stargazing was about my ex, and I know she heard that one, because everybody did. Getting Closer was also about my ex. I don't know if she heard that one. And I don't know if she heard Let It Be Me. But Let It Be Me was what I would say to the person who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And that isn't her. However, the ideas behind it are born out of, she battled depression, as did I. Right. And the ideas behind Let It Be Me are to say to someone who is battling with depression, hey, it doesn't matter what it is, I'm here for you. So that was born out of my relationship with her. Okay. But I don't know if she heard it. And it wouldn't change anything if she did.
No, well, of course. But one thing. Last question. Then, in terms of writing about real situations, and then do you ever kind of have that in the back of your mind, like I'm talking about a real person about?
Yeah. But this, things evolve. Sure. And I no longer think about her when I'm singing these songs. I'm thinking about other things, or new people, or, yeah. But, yeah, it would be interesting to hear if she heard that song. I could ask her. I mean, we're still talking.
No, fair enough.
We just don't talk very often.
I'm sure she heard it. If you're still in, I'm sure she heard it.
Possibly.
Anyways, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Sweet.